Hello my friends, John LaRuffa here with another Straight Up Solo, and in this episode we're going to be taking a look at Apex, the Collected Edition, okay? Now, this game came to me through Kickstarter, but I just got notice today, as I don't know when you're going to be watching this, but as of this publishing, that they do have some left over. That's why I want to put this out now from a solo perspective to see if you would enjoy this kind of game. Maybe you do, then maybe you can get yourself a copy. Maybe if you don't, then you know you can pass. And again, as always, please like and subscribe to my videos as they really help me out. I'm just trying to build up my subscribers and get more action on YouTube. Okay, let's take a look at this.
All right, and as usual, I will be covering this from the solo-only perspective. This game is, for the most part, a solo game anyway, although it does have multiplayer rules, which I have not experienced, that come with the Collected Edition. So you do have that if you want to play it multiplayer, and this one came up, play up to 6 people, I suppose. But I've only ever played it solo. Anyway, so I also bought the play mats with it, the neoprene mats, because I actually didn't realize it was going to come with boards when I did it, so I'm like, well, I'd rather have a mat instead of nothing, but oops, that's my fault. You do not need these. They come with identical sized boards, and I mean, if you really want the mat, so be it, but the boards were just fine, so I have it, I guess. All right, so what do you have going on? You'll notice this kind of has a little bit of a same type of feel as some other solo games that you may have played, or I should say cooperative card games, such as Legendary Encounters, or the Predator ones, or the Marvel ones, or whatever. There's lots of similar types of games, but this one's a little bit different, okay? And I'll kind of show you how that's different in a second. So as usual with any deck builder like this, you have a deck of starting cards, okay? And they tell you how to seed it. You seed it with some kind of beginner cards that have 1 or 2 attacks from the deck that you choose, all right? And you can see the attack down there. By the way, this game does have very, very nice art for you dinosaur enthusiasts out here. For me, I never was a huge fan of dinosaurs. I could take it or leave it, but for those who are, you'll be in for a treat. And then you have these other starting cards, which give you ways to expand your deck. So the way you expand your deck in this game is that you hatch cards out of this Apex deck, and these cards can vary depending on the different dinosaur group you chose, and then help you kind of build up your deck. You can also spend cards with the blue on them to afford to buy evolution cards, which will come out, and the blue also does help you afford to purchase these hatched cards that come out of your Apex deck. And like any other good deck builder, you are going to start with a hand of cards. In this case, the hand is 6. You start with 6 cards, and you do what you usually do in all these things, where you kind of have a buy phase and a utilization phase. But they do it kind of backwards in this game. I shouldn't say backwards, just a different order. Okay, and so what's the point of the game? The point of the game is to defeat the boss card, which is someplace in this hunt deck. Okay, you're trying to beat that boss, and if you do, then you win. If you don't, you lose. It's pretty simple. There is a timer on this game, and depending on this difficulty level that you play, you will have more cards here or less cards, and you add these basic cards, which I'll show you right now, because the first thing you do is reveal one of these cards. And this is the one that you start with, which is basically the emergence. Now, if you don't add any of these at all, then it's very, very hard. But if you add 3, you're on the easy mode, 2 is on standard, 1 is in hard, and then I think 4 is like brutal, or 0 is brutal or impossible or whatever. Anyway, so this kind of helps you get going, and then you're going to put this, this card out there. You do what it says, and then the next step, you're going to populate the game trail, which is this. So you start flipping these cards out, and these cards are what you're going to be hunting, okay? And they have a number of attack that you have to overcome in order to beat the card. They have a number of evolve points that you get when you actually kill the card. And then there's other things. Alert, defensive stance. There's a whole host of different things that you have to do. There's ambush things and such and so forth, that when these cards come out, they may do something immediately, or they may be difficult to kill depending on what they are, okay? So for instance, this one has a defensive stance, and it says this card cannot be hunted. if the defensive stance is on there. Hunt, you have to reveal the top card of the affliction deck. If it's a flesh wound, then add it to your discard pile, otherwise recycle it. So the only way to deal with this one is if you don't, I'm sorry, it doesn't come with a defensive stance unless it trips the alert. So the alert is you gain an affliction and this card gains a defensive stance. So I'll tell you about alerts in just a second. So anyway, you're going to fill these up, okay, one at a time. This is one of the minions that is specific to the boss. So the way you seed this hunt deck is you put in a certain number of like big game, a certain number of titans, certain number of prey, some predators, some menaces, and then some minions, and then the boss. So you're going to put a certain number of those in each time. The boss and minions, the minion number varies depending on the boss, but the rest of them are the same. And I will say this, you have an unbelievable amount of variety in this game. This side here is all of the different decks that you can play with to experience the game. And there's something like, gosh, I don't know, maybe a dozen or more different bosses in here, plus huge decks that feed those other hunt decks. The evolved deck is the same every time, so that's always going to be the same. But besides that, everything else is going to be very, very different because of the randomness in how the card pool is pulled out. And you can choose to have a random Apex deck, or you can decide to build your own depending on what you want in there. It's 23 cards either way. 3 cards are just these little puny hatchery cards that come out. They're very weak. And 20 are either randomly selected or carefully selected, as it says, from the actual stack. And so these things have all sorts of different types in there. They have a cost over here to buy, okay, when you hatch them, and then they have their attack value, and then a whole host of different abilities down at the bottom depending on what the situation is. Okay, all right, so real quick, let's talk about the way the turn flows. So I'm going to finish seeding this deck here, and again, I would be looking at these things and finding out, is there anything that says ambush? Like this says ambush, reveal 9 or more attack value from your hand, or eliminate an Apex card that is not a hatchling. Okay, now in the beginning of the game, if you have these cards in here, your ambush effects do not activate, so that kind of helps you not get crushed right away. And I like that. I like the fact that the game has a built-in mechanic to make sure that you don't have to do an extravagant amount of setup to prepare for that, but it gives you a couple of turns of just softballs to help you get your deck going, which is nice. All right, and then we put this evolved deck out here, and these cards are going to be different depending on just random luck. So some of these will be egg cards, which will help you hatch more cards, and then you draw extra cards. So you hatch more cards, you draw extra cards, hopefully you get more currency or evolve points to buy those cards. Okay? Now, once you've got that out there, and if the boss doesn't appear, you play a normal round. So the first thing you're going to do, and I've got to go ahead and combine this hand here, but you're going to draw 6 cards, okay? And let me go ahead and shuffle these up, so to speak, with one hand, which is sweet. All right, and then I'm going to put 6 cards over here on the side, so we just have them available to us. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so this is my hand, so to speak, all right? Now, in this hand, I've got cards that already have evolve points, which help me buy cards, and then some wimpy cards that allow me to attack something, okay? So I have that set up. That's my 6 cards, and the rest of these go into my draw pile, okay? Now, the cool thing about this game is that you can set up to 3 cards. It says use 3 to set an ambush. They got to be species cards, okay? That means cards that came from your actual deck. So what you can do is you can put these things off to the side and basically set up a very strong, powerful attack hand for later whenever you want to bring it in. However, if you don't have special abilities, you have to add one of these alert cards to your deck. And what that does is you put it in your discard pile, and eventually that's going to come up. And when it does, in your hand, you have to then trigger all these alert effects that are on these cards, which could be bad. So it's like short-term gain, long-term, you're going to have to deal with a penalty. Now, there's ways to get away from the alert decks. So, for instance, this card right here, it says you may take a card from your hand or discard pile and add it to your ambush point without gaining an alert card. So that's kind of cool. So there's ways to mitigate that. But in general, I like that mechanic. That's something that's new. You can kind of set that aside. You can build this up to being pretty powerful and then spring it when the time comes, when you want to take down, like for instance, this guy, 12. That's not easy to do in a hand of 6 cards, okay? Because right now I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can tell I'm a long way away from 12. However, if I set a big ambush up, that could be something that would be, I could bring in later on to try to take this thing down. And why do I want to take these down? Because when you kill one of these cards out here, you take the card, all right? So I'll just show you here. Let's see if there's anything. I can defeat one. Okay. So first you'll go to this. So we just talked about the set the ambush, all right? Now we do play evolve cards from your hand. So if I have any cards that have evolved powers, I would play them. I don't have any cards that have evolved powers. That would be cards like these, for instance, okay? These ones that have blue things on the top, blue points, and have, powers that go with them, okay? But I don't have any of that. Then it says, go ahead and hunt the game trail, okay? So to hunt the game trail, I look out here and see, is there anything that I can actually attack? And I have, like I said, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I could attack and kill a card that has up to 5, which in this case is this guy, all right? So taking a look at this, it says, warning, hatchlings cannot be used to hunt this card. So that's unfortunate. These guys are all hatchlings, so I can't do anything with that. But I'm not going to hunt it, but for the sake of just showing you what would happen, if I killed this card, I would go ahead and look and make sure I, have satisfied anything that could stay down here. Then I would put him in my horde deck, okay? And I would use him later when it's time to purchase cards to spend the card, spend that currency, so to speak, to get more of these cards out of here that I've hatched, which I like. I like that mechanic. I think it's cool. But we're not going to do that right now because I can't do that. So I can't hunt anything because you saw what happened. But I can play. The next thing it says is, purchase, buy evolve cards from the hatchery or evolve pool. Well, I have 4. Okay, now I don't have anything from the hatchery because I didn't hatch any cards, but I could buy some of these cards out here. And so I'm going to buy this one for 2 because this is one of those that can help me set an ambush. And I'm also going to buy this egg, which will help me get things going further. Oh, and by the way, when I drew this card over here, I was supposed to draw an extra card, so I should actually have 7 in my hand. And it was just an extra 1, which actually doesn't help me one bit. Okay, so I have done all my playing cards. Now I do the end of the round. So first thing I do, I play all these cards. They all go into my discard pile. All right, they're like any deck builder that you probably understand and know. They go to the discard pile. Away we go. Then I draw 6 new ones. Okay, I draw them at the end of the round. That means that, if I have different things come up, that alert or anything else, that will, trigger those effects. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw those cards again, which I don't have any alerts or anything. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as in any deck builder, because I don't have all the cards I need, I got to shuffle this deck, and away we go. Now, you kind of get the idea of what's going on, okay? And it's just like many deck builders out there. So I'm going to explain to you what I think is different, why I think there's positives and negatives to this. But here is my hand now. And by the time, also, I have to recycle the hatchery. So those cards that I may have hatched with eggs, if I hatch any of them, they go back under the deck. So they're kind of like here today, gone tomorrow. Then I have to shift the game trail and evolve the card pool. So what I do is I take any card that's over here and they go under these decks, respectively, all right? And I do the same thing over here. So you're always going to discard whatever's over there to keep things moving. Then you're going to shift things over. I'm having a little hard time focusing there. Sorry, come on, back to focus. You could do it. All right, so I'm going to put out another card here. Oops, from the wrong deck. So we put out from this deck first. Okay, and this guy is another, different looking card. He has different things going on. It says alert, this card is placed on the top of the hunt deck. So if you have an alert, if you draw an alert, you got to put that down, okay? And alert is the first thing you play, when you start your next turn, basically, okay? So those are there, and then I'm going to go ahead and flip another one of these, and I start another turn. The game is pretty darn fast, all right? Because you're really going through this, and you're going to find this boss, and you're going to set up a boss fight, which I'll kind of explain that in just a second. And then if you beat him, you win. If you don't, he goes back to the bottom of the deck, but you only have a certain number of rounds, and then you get one final try. And when you finish, if you didn't win, you lose. I know that's a brain buster. I got it. But if you didn't beat the boss there at the very end, then you end up losing. So let's find this boss card and just kind of talk about how he works here real quick. Okay, so in this case, my boss card was actually pretty close to the top. So what would happen is he would come out, okay? And you could choose to flee or you can choose to fight. If you flee, you basically discard these. You get new ones of these, and it's just kind of like a reset round. There's no real penalty for fleeing, except you just have to put them at the bottom of the deck, so you're not going to see him for a little while. And then you proceed. But if you go ahead and try to fight him, what you're going to need to do is come up with a certain amount of attack to actually beat him or actually start to inflict wounds. So here it says 0 to 9. If you have 0 to 9 attack when you go ahead and hit him, all right, you're going to eliminate an apex card that is not a hatchling, and then the battle ends. But if you can get to 10 or 16, then you're going to gain an affliction card, and this card gains an affliction card. The battle continues. You want the battle to continue, because if the battle ends, then it's over and you didn't kill him, unless you've been able to do 4 damage worth of hits on him. Now, how do I do that? When I gain affliction cards, I will flip over an affliction and I'll see what type it is. This one, if I flipped it over, would hit him for 1 damage, right? But this jerk has a little bit of a condition here that makes him difficult. It says this card can only gain severe traumas. All their affliction cards are recycled instead. Okay, so that means there's 6 severe traumas in this deck, which is about 30-ish cards. Can't remember the specifics. So that means it's going to be harder. You're going to be flipping these things, trying to find the severe traumas, and when you're not coming up, you're getting hits, and he's not. Look at all these. These are regular ones, regular ones, regular ones. And these affliction cards come through all sorts of places. So you've got a whole thing, and then all of a sudden, fine, boom, a severe trauma. Awesome. Well, that counts as 2 hits. So you have to have 2 of these things on that boss to get the job done. So in this case, it's going to be hard to kill him just because there's not a big chance to beat him in that deck. So you got to know kind of what you're doing. And here it says, 17 plus, this card gains 2 affliction cards, battle continues. So if you hit this guy real hard, and again, this is a pretty tough boss right here, then you have a better chance of actually landing hits. So that is the goal of the game, is to build up your deck with really strong cards. And again, I'll show you a couple of cards here just to show you. This is an expensive one, but he does 3 attack normally and then +5 when played from an ambush point or during a tropical storm or a coastal flood, which is one of those environment cards here. This card over here says, +3 attack or 3 attack, and then stomping grounds +4 when played from an ambush point. So this deck is all about the ambush points and, really putting things in there or being in the tropical storm and then causing, major damage. But if you can afford this guy, he's an 11, that's a 6, okay? So that gets you pretty close in one card to being able to get to some of these conditions. So that is the basic flavor and feel of this game. Now let's talk about what I think.
So, Apex, pluses and minuses. I'll start with the minuses first. As with any kind of game like this, you are going to have a little bit of setup. This one probably sets up in about 5 minutes, which isn't that long compared to some other games that I showed you earlier, like the Legendary Encounters. Those could take a little bit longer, but you're still looking at 5 minutes of setup. And you're looking at about 5-ish, or a little longer minutes to take down, because you got to separate all these cards and put them back. Okay? That's obviously a minus. It's always going to be a minus. Another minus is that I would say, I guess if you hate dinosaur themes, then this one's not going to do it for you because it's all dinosaurs. But the theme is not that big of a deal. I shouldn't even say it's a minus. It's just a consideration. There's nothing minus about it. You can ignore the theme and be just fine. And I would say that sometimes the game can be fairly punishing depending on how you set it up. And so that could be a plus or minus depending on what you want. Okay? Some pluses. I like the fact that there is the ambush choices. I like the fact that there are more choices than just the standard. I just kind of, keep getting the same types of tropes that you see over and over in these deck building games. In this game, yes, there's card combos. Yes, there is, pluses and minuses for attacking certain cards out there. And doing, getting them into the area, but it seems a little bit sharper. I don't know why. It just seems a little bit more poignant. Like if I kill this guy, he's going to give me a lot of stuff which I can hold here, hatch a big guy, then put the big guy in my deck, keeping my deck small. You don't have to fill your deck with fodder. You can keep it small. You can wait for those big payoffs, because when you have that hunting ground filled, not the hunting ground, but your hoard filled with cards, those don't go away. You don't have to spend them. So you can save up for big cards. I like that aspect a lot. So you're not at the mercy completely of just, this is my hand draw and this is what happens. In this game, the benefit I think that you get is that you can store cards longer in the ambush point or in your hoard, waiting for those key points. And I think that's very sharp and very good. That adds a lot to this game. I am a little sad that the Evolved deck really doesn't have that many cards in there, but you have so much other variety in your actual decks themselves that's okay, I suppose. It's fine. It's just, I would like to see a little bit more in there, but they've probably got 7 or 8, 9 types of cards. That's not the end of the world. It just gets pretty stale up there after a few plays. But it is not stale considering how many cards I showed you that were in the box. You have a ton of different Apex decks you can play with. So there's lots of different things to explore here. And I think that is probably the biggest selling point of the game for me, is that in this one box, the collected edition, which came with a lot of expansions and other things, well, I should say an additional amount of content. There are a couple of expansions in here which I haven't tried, but they're mostly thematic expansions. They don't really bend the rules too much. But again, I haven't tried them, so I've been very satisfied with what came in the box, so that it doesn't add additional rules to it. And then I'd say a big bonus too is that this game is not going to drag on. Some deck builders can drag, some take a long time. Well, I got to get this, and it's hard to do that. This game is, you feel the crunch. You feel the pressure of those time cards ticking away in the environment. And I like that. I always like solo games that give you that angst that I've got to hurry up or it's going to be too late. I have one, I'd say my win rate is like 40% so far. I've played 5 or 6 games, so that's not so bad. Of course, I played on the, with the easier decks and some more straightforward, simpler bosses. When I haven't really gone, right to the jugular, and I've played on easy mode. So I think that this game isn't necessarily punishing, but it can be better. You can tune it up when you get better at it, and that's also, I think, a plus. Finally, I'd say that there is some familiarity with this and other deck builders like the Legendary series. You kind of saw that in the way that you have that, game trail with the different things you want to attack out there. And there's not as many modifiers, okay? So where this game doesn't have some of that exploration is there's not a big story behind it. It's not like you're setting up with this type of scenario that has these conditions with these alerts and these things. You got to get this and that. It doesn't have that. This game doesn't have any of that. So it pays off in the fact that it's easier to set up, but you don't have these elaborate scenarios that some of those other games have that can make those things more fun. This one's, every scenario is basically the same. You're going to find that boss, you got to kill him. The boss is different, the cards are different, but you're going to have a more specific approach to winning this game, playing this game. So overall, that's what I think of it. I think it's a good solo choice if you like this sort of thing. I don't think that if you love the Legendary encounters, this is the next evolution, because like I said, there's a difference there. If you hate deck builders, obviously you're not going to like this one. If you dislike deck builders, I don't think this is going to change your mind. You got to like this kind of play. You got to like putting together decks, maximizing them, that sort of thing. If you find those things exhausted, you maybe won't like it. And also, I guess if you have an abundance of those other types of games, you may not find enough here that is going to be like, wow, that really knocks my socks off. I would say the best thing about this game, again, is that it's more strategic and less tactical than those other games because of your ambush point and your hoard. And that's why I like it. That's why I appreciate it. So anyway, that's what I think about it. I hope this helped you make a decision one way or another. If this is something for you, I know they still have copies available at the time of this posting. Who knows what will happen if you find this months or years later. But thanks again for watching. Hope whatever you play, you enjoy it to the fullest. Take it easy, everybody.